the Adventures in Learning podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Diane, and today I am so excited to welcome Hena Khan to the program. She is an award-winning author. I fell in love with her, I realized many, many years ago through her picture books, but I also absolutely adore Amina's voice and Amina's song. I've used them when I've taught both middle grade and with my college students. And this new book that she has out right now is absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait for you to hear more about Drawing Deena. And I want to also ask her, because she's got a really busy year coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about her new books that are coming out this year. So, Hena, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. It's so nice to talk with you.
Well, I am so glad you're here. Let's start with the brand new book. I have to tell you, I gobbled up Drawing Deena in about a day. I couldn't put it down. And I found for me, as I was reading it, I thought of so many young girls who I know who suffer from anxiety and suffer from it's almost crippling for them. And I thought Deena was such a refreshing character in terms of the voice and the struggles that she has going on. I wondered if you could talk a little bit about Deena as a character and what inspired you to write this book.
Oh, thank you so much. Deena, she's sort of a combination of different people in my life, including me and other young people in my family who either have her artistic talent or have struggled with anxiety themselves. The idea was really the fact that for many children, who are experiencing anxiety like Deena, they don't know what it is. And they may not think, or their family may not think that they have any reason to be anxious. And so it can kind of sneak up in this very, subtle way at first until it grows. And that's what I wanted to share, like this journey of her, dealing with these sort of uncomfortable symptoms, but it's not overwhelming her to the point where she can't function. She's really just going through her life, but not feeling like it's something worth sharing until it gets to a point where she needs to. But I think that, a lot of times we do confuse anxiety for other things in children, whether it's, gastrointestinal or an allergy or, just growing pains. And so that was something I wanted to explore too, was, the response of the people around her in very different roles in her life. But more than that, a story just about, dealing with life and changes and interpersonal dynamics and family dynamics and this love for art and what it means to create art and to put yourself into the world and in a vulnerable position. So all of that in one little book. So a lot
And
for.
you captured all of that. And, I was just thinking as you were talking about the response of the people around her,
Mhm.
that was so well done because, we don't necessarily know how to respond to anxiety in a young person as adults. I found
Yeah.
myself thinking this should be required reading for adults as well as for kids.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, because, like I said, sometimes we think, we can overlook it very easily or mistake it for something else. We can very easily think, well, wait till you're my age, right? Then you'll know what stress is. Like you're a kid, you're 12. What do you have to worry about? And we never, sometimes you don't even know what it is, right? As the anxious person, you don't know what it is that might be causing that. So to me, that was important, as well as the other side of like the resources that are there for kids, especially in a public school setting. And Deena is a child of immigrants who, haven't navigated the public school system, don't know exactly, what services are available. And I think even for me, who did go through public school here, I was surprised to learn about how many things are available to kids through, counseling all the way through school psychologists to really support kids who are struggling with this. And especially since it's something that we know it's unfortunately afflicting more and more kids, that there are many avenues for getting them the support they need.
And the stigma, I think, is less than it was as well when you were a child Dina's age or when I was a child Dina's age. I think there are more resources and more people who are ready to support you. But if you don't know how to navigate the system, you don't know what to reach out and ask for.
Right, right. And unfortunately, like, the stigma is still real. Like, it is lessening, which is encouraging. But I think for many families, it's this notion of, well, this is our private life and, we don't need to involve other people. We'll manage it on our own. And
Right.
and I know many people who feel like, well, if you have friends in a supportive, loving family, why do you need to talk to a therapist? Or why do you need to involve someone else? So, of course, those things are not mutually exclusive, and you can very much have a supportive community and lovely friends and family, but still need to learn how to manage, something that's very real and manifests in very mysterious ways sometimes, and can very directly be affected by strategies and coping skills that friends and family can't always teach us.
Absolutely. Now, I understand you've got a selection from Drawing Deena that you're willing to share with us. Would you
Oh,
mind
yes.
reading a little bit from the book?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you. So this is, as I mentioned, Dina's an artist, and she's also trying to help her mother struggling at home business, selling clothes. So she's decided to, create a social media account for her mom's business, which is called Threads. But she's also, this young artist who's being encouraged to share her own work too. And this is after her cousin has posted a cartoon that Dina has drawn of her cousin Parissa. Parissa starts to swipe through her phone and then adds, "By the way, you're getting lots of likes." "Who is?" I ask. "You. I mean the drawing you made of me." Parissa hands me her phone. I grab the phone and take a look. Sure enough, there are lots of fire and heart emojis underneath the cartoon, along with comments like, "OMG, I love this. Me too. I want one. Make one for me." I'm surprised by how it makes my heart swell as I scroll through them. "Are you okay with her posting that?" Lucia whispers, looking over my shoulder. "Yeah," I whisper back. "She asked me, and it's fine." "You drew that? Can you make me one too?" Lucia continues, her voice at a normal volume now. "Of course," I say, "but it's a basic sketch. It's not that special." "Maybe for you, but I could never make anything like that, and I want one," Lucia says. "Me too," Nisha adds. "Of me playing tennis, please. Serving." These sketches aren't more than doodles, but I'm touched that my friends want them. I can't help but wonder what it would feel like to have people react like that to an actual work of art that I made. "Are you finally going to make an account of your own?" Parissa asks as she watches me. "I need to focus on the one for Z's threads, and I need to get my mom some followers." "Well, you need content. These photos are the right start," Parissa says. "You should use hashtags and tag people and put up a bio and photos of your mom and yourself and—" "Photos of us?" I interrupt. Listening to her is making my hands sweat, and a part of me wants to delete it all. It's like when she has all those opinions about my hair and my nails. I know she's trying to help by showing me 5 different products and giving me lots of instructions, but it gets overwhelming. "Yeah, duh," Prissa scoffs. "It's called social media for a reason. It's about being social." "Is it though?" Lucia asks, looking at me, but Prissa ignores her. "Maybe I'll add that kind of thing later," I say. "Okay, but put up more stuff. You have to make it interesting, and maybe some behind the scenes moments, like some cool shots of your store and videos of your hands drawing the logo or something like that. People love that kind of thing," Prissa explains. "That's not a bad idea." "People love cats," Nisha says, "and babies. You should add some cats and babies, or like baby cats." "They're called kittens, genius," Parissa says, which makes Lucia snort out the water she's drinking, and then we all laugh. I wish I felt as sure of myself as Parissa. Life would be so different.
I love that. And as you were reading, it reminded me of another thread through the story, which is the whole notion of social media and um, whether it brings more good than ill, especially when we're in those early years.
Yeah.
What drew you to add social media into the mix?
Honestly, like the entire book, I will confess, is really dealing with things that I've been thinking about a lot in my life now as an adult. And it's so fun to be able to go back and re-examine life or examine life through the eyes of a young person. And for me, social media is so tricky. I have such a complicated relationship with it. All the things I think teens are dealing with, we're dealing with as adults too, like how it affects the way we feel about ourselves, the reaction to likes, the reaction to comments, all of that. And it was fun to explore that through the eyes of someone who's not supposed to be on social media yet. She gets permission to do it for the sake of her mom's business, and then she's tempted to use it for herself, but she also sees the effects of what or her cousin's relationship with it. And I like that she's young enough and new enough to it that she can be a critical observer, because she's not full into it yet. And I think
Right.
we can all be like that, right? Until we're in the throes of it ourselves, and we quickly forget, and so she's very much at that beginning part where she's very observant of what and cognizant of every every follow, every like, what it means, and how the comments make her feel. And I wanted to, introduce that because I know it's something that a lot of young people at this age are starting to dabble into, it's a lot to navigate and makes us feel all sorts of things,
Uh,
good and bad. And then of course there's the marketing side, which
right.
as a creative person and as a professional, I need to do, but it makes it really complicated.
Yeah, no, it is a complicated thing. And as you were reading that passage, I was getting anxious as an adult, realizing my own complicated relationship with social media, because you're right. As a creator and as a business person, we need to use it. But then there's that personal side of it where is it healthy? Is it contributing to real relationships with people? And where
Right.
do you sort of take that step back? And I love the idea that Deena, as a beginner, can look a little more critically, and maybe that will help other young people who are sort of just entering that world have a little more
Mhm.
to navigate with.
Yeah, yeah, or who may find that they're in it but don't like the way it makes them feel, to maybe, pause and think about it, and maybe, do take steps to help themselves feel better about it. Because she's definitely, in that new phase where she's still figuring it out, and I think a lot of us are there. And even after we've been in it, sometimes it's good to take a step back and say, what is this doing to me? So that was some of the idea behind that.
And I just, like I said, I loved this book, and it felt to me almost like Deena could easily be a natural cousin and friend for Amina and the two prior books. Like I could have seen them becoming friends at school. And
Oh, I love that. I could see that too.
And so I was going to ask, you write these beautiful heroines who are coming from an immigrant world, or of immigrant parents. What's the inspiration behind these characters who are so relatable?
Yeah, so I draw a lot from my own experience. I steal things out of my kids' lives, but also the families I know and the kids I love around me. And in Dina's case, like I know a family a lot like hers, with hardworking immigrant parents who are really, maybe struggling to make ends meet, but doing everything they can to succeed, and pushing their kids to do the same. And so Dina's mom was a really important character for me because of her homegrown business. And I really wanted to focus on that mother-daughter relationship a bit in this book, and initially intended it to be a bit more contentious than it is, because I just couldn't, the loyal daughter in me couldn't do it. but but there is some tension there, and maybe not at least in the first part of the book, not a clear understanding. And I like that Dina throughout the book begins to appreciate everything her mom is, and see her in a different way. And as an artist herself, to start to appreciate her mom's artistry and designing and making beautiful clothes, and seeing the fact that sometimes the people who we think we know the best in the world, we might put them in a box or think they're incapable of changing, like they're done, they're fully formed,
Yeah.
especially elders. But that, they're capable of change, and you know um evolution as much as we are. So that was important to me, this whole sense of the entire family sort of growing together and figuring out life together, which, of course happens in all families, but especially when there's immigrant parents, sometimes the kids may have to advocate for themselves a little bit more. They may have to help the parents help them sometimes, because it's, just the nature of them not being as familiar with the way things work here sometimes.
No, absolutely. Now, one of the questions I like to ask people is to tell us a little bit about your adventures in learning. And yours in particular are really interesting to me because so many authors sort of have a lane. They write middle grade, or they write picture books, or they write nonfiction. And you are so prolific. You cross over all of these different genres, different audiences. How did you get to that point?
Wow, thank you. Well, I think it might have something to do with the fact of how I started. So I started off as a writer for hire with Scholastic's continuities department, where they used to have book of the month clubs that they would ship to kids.
I remember
And those
those.
yeah, they were so fun to
They
work
were.
on, but it was a variety of series, and it forced me to, you know, think in different ways, and accept the challenge of, writing something I may know nothing about, like the International Space Station, or whatever it was. And I think it made me think a lot about the reader on the other side and wanting to reach them. And so, I had young kids when I first started, or actually one young child when I wrote my first picture book, which was Night of the Moon, that came out in 2008. But I think as my son was growing, I started thinking more about, middle grade, and then Amina's voice came along. But some of it was, reader driven, where parents would say, oh, something for my in between age child, between picture book and middle grade, or, me just wanting to sort of push different, or stretch different writing muscles and try new things. So I loved pick your path adventure books as a kid. That's why I tried that. I know how much kids love graphic novels, so that's why I'm working on those now, and hopefully just different ways to reach different readers, and keep myself challenged too.
Well, and you've had some really fun collaborations too. I'm thinking about like the Unicorn Rescue Society with Adam Gidwitz, which is a totally different voice than you normally write in.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
was a lot of fun to read as well.
Oh, thank you. And it's so fun to write, and I think that, going back to the series, and that, it forced me to find the voice of, that particular product, so if it was jokey and fun, or if it was serious and academic, and most of them weren't too serious, but it would change. And so it was so fun to be part of that series, where the characters and the world building was already done, the voices were very strongly established, and then I had to just go in there and try to make Adam laugh. And so we would pass the manuscript back and forth and write a few chapters each. And, that was my goal. I was like, how do I make this funny? How do I, impress him? Because he's so hilarious. And I love that it was this adventure-filled story where you're not necessarily looking for a Muslim character, but it's, you get to meet these really interesting Muslim people in the mountainous area of Pakistan, of all places. And I love that it's not, a book about identity, or but it's this adventure, and these characters are just part of it. And I had a similar experience with Best Wishes book 4 with Sarah Malinovsky, which comes out this November. It's called Like a Boss. And like writing with Adam, I mean, it was just such a joy to write this very funny, action-packed story, and same thing, going back and forth and just weaving in as much humor and absurdity as we could, because it was just a great premise of a magic bracelet that grants a wish, and the wearer, doesn't necessarily realize where the wish will take her until it's too late. So a lot of unexpected happenings.
Well, and I love the fact that you have, with the body of your work, you've managed to create Muslim characters and center them in every genre, but in a way that it provides a window and mirror for kids who may not have exposure to the religion or to the culture, while again providing mirrors for those who need to see themselves reflected back as well. I think that that's powerful, and it does so much to break down barriers in the classroom.
Oh, I hope so. And for me, that was always my intended audience. I definitely thought of, the classroom and the kid who maybe is represented, and how they would feel, and I always wanted them to feel proud. That's always been my underlying goal, that, even though my characters may struggle with, confidence or anxiety, or, wanting, to make a team or whatever it is, their challenges, their identity, and their race, their religion, their heritage, like that is never their struggle. It's always something else. Um, and for me, that comes from wanting that child to feel, like I said, feel proud of who they are, and proud to be seen by their peers. Because like you said, I think it's equally important for the mirror for the child who hasn't been represented, but also for others to say, oh, okay, you're just like me in these ways, and like your family's, different from mine, but also really similar to mine, and
Exactly. And it builds empathy and compassion because the issues you're writing about are common middle grade issues.
right, right. And for me, it's and I think it's important to have books that deal with, Islamophobia head on, or, bullying or things like that. But I feel like, I want to write stories where kids also feel joy and connection in a different way, where, like you said, they just get to be the character and go on this adventure, and have very relatable challenges that their peers can also have experienced.
Well, and that joy and connection leaps off the page. I was also thinking about more to the story where you reimagined Little Women. And I loved the way you brought it into sort of a contemporary life and centered different characters, but showed that
Um,
the story itself translates over the years.
oh, thank you. It's funny because that book came about because I adored Little Women as a kid. It was a book I read incessantly, like to the point
Same.
where my family was irritated by me. They're
Mine
like, "Stop
too.
reading
And I could
that."
never decide which March sister I was. Like, I would go through
Ah,
different things and I'd be Joe and then I'd be Beth. I generally avoided Amy, but now I really
me
like
too.
Amy.
Well, little fun fact is that this book, Drawing Deena, originally I pitched as a companion to More to the Story, and Deena was supposed to be Eliza, my Amy character, and that's where the artist idea came from initially. And then when I was talking to my editor, she was like, "What about a standalone?" And we talked about the pros and cons of that, and I decided to try, but then I had to go back and come up with this new family and the new premise for the story, but some of it I had already thought of in the context of the More to the Story world. Um, but the reason I found that story, I realized as an adult that the reason I found More to the Story, I'm sorry, Little Women, so relatable might have had something to do with the fact that I had no representation in literature as a kid. And I found something very comforting about this family set in, like, the mid 1800s. And some of their social norms were very familiar to me, more so than, watching contemporary television where
Right.
oh, you can talk back to your parents, like that's not something I could ever do. Or even some of the gender norms and some of the rules around dating and marriage, like all that, I was like, yep, that's the way it is now for me. So it was really fun to go back and sort of write what I consider a love letter to Little Women, and pull some of my favorite themes and moments from that book into a new story.
Well, it was wonderful. And you've got an incredibly busy year. You've got The Door is Open, Behind My Doors, The Story of the World's Oldest Library, and We Are Big Time coming out. And you said there's at least one more. Can you tell us a
Yeah,
little bit
the
about
best
your
wishes.
new books this
Yeah.
talk about your new books this year?
Thank you. Well, yeah, it's really exciting because they, like you mentioned earlier, they're all different. So different genres. I have an anthology, The Doors Open, which I edited, which features amazing South Asian writers. It's middle grade. It's all set in a community center, and the stories are linked, where you get to meet characters from different stories as you continue to read. And it all builds to a bigger story as well. So I love anthologies and I love short stories, but this one I think is extra special because they are connected in this way, and just some of my favorite writers. So that was a pleasure and just a huge honor to work on and help create. And the picture book, Behind My Doors, is the story of the oldest library in Fez, Morocco, which was a place I visited and a story that I always wanted to tell. And then my debut graphic novel is We Are Big Time, which comes out this summer. And that was, a new type of writing for me, but a story I really, really wanted to tell, based on the true story of an all hijab wearing girls basketball team in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it's this sort of turnaround sports story, with a little twist, unexpected twist, and just a really fun way to explore sports and um, you know the way we sometimes are hard on ourselves in ways we don't need to be, the power of a team. So many themes that are special to me, and this very beautiful visual format, which the lines are incredible, and the artist did an amazing job just bringing that to life. So that was like magic, seeing that. Um, and then the Best Wishes book with Sarah that I just mentioned at the end of the year. So we'll be super busy over the next, few months, but hopefully very exciting too
Well, it's
for me.
very
And
exciting.
hopefully for readers. Thank you.
And if you were talking to students, because I know you do a lot of school visits, and somebody wanted to emulate the path that you've followed, what would you tell them to do?
Wow. Well, in terms of writing, one thing I always tell kids is that, I never believed myself, and I didn't consider myself a writer. I had trouble calling myself a writer or an author, even after I had several books published. I had deep imposter syndrome. Um, And I think a lot of it really stems from that, the belief that you can do it. And hopefully, meeting authors, seeing diverse authors helps, kids realize that even if they aren't the mainstream, that it's possible for them. But also, the idea that anybody who wants to write can absolutely write. There's no test you take, there's no certificate you need or a special degree. You just have to start doing it, and overcome that, self-doubt and fear, and just do it. And I also tell kids about how I didn't feel comfortable sharing a lot of things about my life and what made me different when I was a kid. I kind of hid those things away and just wanted to blend in, like many of us do. And now those things are the things I highlight in all of my stories. And it's nice to be able to celebrate the things about my background, my culture, my family, and even some of the things that annoyed me when I was a kid. I get to write now and in a very sometimes in like a funny way, and change things I didn't like to work out the way I would have hoped and things like that. So, I really hope that kids will look to their own lives too, and not shy away from what makes them different, and maybe explore those things because you know it better than anybody else, and who else can write it but you.
Exactly. And so, last question for today. I like to always finish with people with this question: what brings you hope?
Oh wow. Honestly, it's kids, like so many of us, and seeing how honest they are, how fair they are, how eager they are to write the things that we haven't gotten right yet in the world. I meet young readers who are so perceptive and pick up on things that I didn't even know were in my books, or added a whole layer that I'm like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, yeah, that's what I meant. And I like totally didn't mean that, and just questions from, I went to a school in DC that was, one of the lowest resource schools I've been to. And the kids there just asked me the most powerful questions. And I think we have to give them the tools, and they're going to fix this world because they just they're not jaded, and they're open, and like I said, this inherent sense of fairness and justice that just makes me hopeful, because sometimes as grown-ups we mess things up, but they, they'll fix it. They're what I know, it's a cliche answer to be like the children are the future, but they really are.
No,
um
absolutely. Well, and you bring me hope as well. Your beautiful writing is definitely hopeful and joy filled. Hena Khan, thank you for coming on to the Adventures in Learning podcast this week. Folks, go get Drawing Deena. It's out this month and it is such a beautiful book. And I will drop links to your website in the show notes as well.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to chat with you.
Thank you.